I never expected my snow shovel to become the center of a legal nightmare, but when you live in Lakewood Heights, Colorado, anything is possible if the HOA gets involved. My name is Quinton J, and I had been living peacefully in this suburban neighborhood for about 3 years before the incident that would turn my winter into a bureaucratic circus. I worked as a software engineer from home, which meant I spent most of my time in my modest 2-story house on Maple Drive, minding my own business and keeping my property in decent shape. The neighborhood itself was pretty standard for the Denver metro area. Rows of similar-looking houses with manicured lawns, white picket fences, and that unmistakable suburban atmosphere, where everyone knew everyone's business, whether you wanted them to or not. The HOA president was a woman named Brenda Carmichael, a 52-year-old real estate agent with bleached blonde hair that she wore in that signature speak to the manager style. She had been running the homeowners association like her personal fiefdom for the past 6 years, and most people in the neighborhood had learned to just nod along with whatever she said to avoid confrontation. I had managed to stay off her radar for the most part, paying my dues on time and following the seemingly endless list of rules about lawn height, fence colors, and acceptable holiday decorations. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning in late January, when Colorado got hit with one of those massive snowstorms that dumps 2 feet of powder overnight. I woke up around 6 in the morning to the sound of snow plows rumbling down the street, and when I looked out my bedroom window, I could barely see my car in the driveway. The snow was still coming down hard, thick flakes swirling in the early morning darkness. I made myself some coffee and waited for the storm to pass before tackling the driveway. By 9 o'clock, the snowfall had finally stopped, leaving behind a winter wonderland that was beautiful to look at but a pain to deal with. I bundled up in my heavy winter coat, pulled on my insulated gloves, and headed out to the garage to grab my snow shovel. That is when I discovered it was gone. I stood there staring at the empty spot where my shovel should have been, confused and increasingly annoyed. It was a good shovel, too, one of those ergonomic models with the bent handle that saved your back. More importantly, it was not just any shovel. It had been given to me by the local fire station during a community safety event last fall. The Lakewood Fire Department had partnered with a hardware store to distribute these shovels to residents, part of some initiative about snow safety and preventing heart attacks while shoveling. Each shovel had been marked with the fire station's logo and property number etched into the metal blade. I searched the entire garage thinking maybe I had moved it somewhere and forgotten, but it was definitely gone. The side door to the garage had been unlocked, something I occasionally forgot to check, so theoretically anyone could have walked in and taken it. But who steals a snow shovel? And more specifically, who steals a snow shovel right before a major snowstorm when everyone would need one? I asked my neighbor to the left, an elderly man named George who had lived in the neighborhood for 20 years. He shook his head and said he had not seen anything unusual. My neighbor to the right was a young couple who both worked downtown, and they were not home enough to notice much of anything. With no shovel and a driveway full of snow, I had no choice but to drive to the hardware store and buy a new one. Of course, half the city had the same idea, and the store was completely sold out. I ended up borrowing a basic plastic shovel from George and spent the next 3 hours clearing my driveway and sidewalk, my back screaming in protest the entire time. 2 days later, I got a letter in my mailbox. Not an email, but an actual printed letter on HOA letterhead slipped into my mailbox with the smug efficiency that only an overzealous homeowners association could manage. I opened it while standing at the mailbox, my breath fogging in the cold air. Dear Mr. J, it has come to our attention that your property is in violation of HOA Guidelines Section 4.7b, which states that all snow removal equipment must be stored in an enclosed space and not left visible from the street. Your snow shovel was observed leaning against the exterior of your garage on January 28th, creating an unsightly appearance that diminishes property values. This is your first warning. A fine of $50 will be assessed if this violation is not corrected within 48 hours. Sincerely, Brenda Carmichael, HOA President. I read the letter 3 times, each time feeling my blood pressure rise a little higher. My shovel had been stolen. I had spent hours clearing snow with inadequate equipment, and now I was getting threatened with a fine for a shovel. I did not even have any more. And when had I ever left my shovel leaning against the garage? I always stored it inside. I walked back into my house and immediately pulled up the security camera footage from my front door camera. I had installed it a year ago after a package theft, and while it did not cover the garage perfectly, it had a decent side view. I scrubbed through the footage from January 28th, which was 3 days before the big snowstorm. At 2:15 in the afternoon, while I had been in a video conference call for work, a figure appeared on the edge of the frame. I enhanced the image as much as my basic camera software would allow, and there she was, clear as day. Brenda Carmichael, wearing her distinctive white puffy jacket with fur trim, walking right up to my garage. The side door opened. She disappeared inside for about 30 seconds, then emerged carrying my snow shovel. She walked it down my driveway, and the angle showed her clearly leaning it against the exterior garage wall, right in plain view of the street. She took out her phone, snapped a photo, then picked the shovel back up and walked off camera toward her own house 3 doors down. I sat back in my chair, absolutely stunned. She had stolen my shovel, staged a violation, photographed it, and then taken the shovel for herself. And now she was threatening to fine me for her own manufactured violation. This was beyond petty. This was calculated and malicious. I saved the footage to 3 different locations, including a cloud backup. Then I sat down to figure out my next move. My first instinct was to march down to her house and confront her directly, but I had learned enough about people like Brenda to know that would be a mistake. She would just deny everything, claim I was harassing her, and probably trump up more violations against me. Instead, I called the non-emergency police line. A dispatcher answered, and I explained the situation as clearly as I could. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "So, let me get this straight," the dispatcher said, her tone suggesting she dealt with weird calls all day and this was just another one for the list. "Your HOA president stole your snow shovel to create a fake violation." "Yes, and I have video evidence." "The shovel is also marked property of the Lakewood Fire Department. It was given to me during a community event, but technically it still belongs to the fire station." Another pause. "Hold on a second." I waited, listening to the muffled sounds of the dispatcher talking to someone else in the background. After about 2 minutes, she came back on the line. "Okay, sir, I am going to have an officer come out to take a statement. This is definitely theft, and if the shovel belongs to the fire department, that makes it theft of government property, which is a more serious charge. Can you be available in about an hour?" "Absolutely." Officer Martinez showed up exactly an hour later, a stocky man in his mid-30s with a no-nonsense demeanor. I showed him the video footage on my laptop, and I watched his expression shift from mild interest to genuine surprise. "Wow," he said, rewinding the footage to watch it again. That is pretty blatant. And you said this shovel has the fire department markings on it? Yes, it was part of the winter safety program. Each shovel was etched with the station logo and a property number. I have the documentation from when they gave it to me. I pulled up the email I had received from the fire department last October, confirming my participation in the program and listing the property number of the shovel assigned to me. Officer Martinez took notes, asked me several more questions about my interactions with Brenda and the HOA, and photographed the letter I had received. "I am going to go have a conversation with Miss Carmichael," he said, closing his notebook. "In the meantime, do not engage with her directly. Let us handle this. What about the fine she is threatening? I would not worry about that. If what you are showing me is accurate, and it certainly looks like it is, she is going to have bigger problems than HOA fines." Officer Martinez left, and I tried to get some work done, but I kept glancing out the window toward Brenda's house. About 30 minutes after the officer left my place, I saw his patrol car pull up in front of her house. He was inside for nearly 45 minutes. My phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize, but it had a local area code, so I answered. "Is this Quinton J?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Deputy Chief Rawlings from Lakewood Fire Station 12. Officer Martinez just contacted us about a theft involving one of our property-marked shovels. We take this very seriously. Any theft of fire department property, even something as simple as a snow shovel, is prosecuted to the full extent of the law. We need that equipment back, and we need to know who took it." I explained the entire situation to Deputy Chief Rawlings, sent her the video footage, and provided all the documentation I had. She listened with increasing frustration, which I could hear building in her voice. "Mr. J, I want you to know that we will be filing a formal report with the police department and pursuing charges. Those shovels were purchased with municipal funds as part of a public safety initiative, and theft of that property is a criminal matter. We also loan those shovels to residents with the understanding that they remain fire department property. The fact that an HOA president would steal one to manufacture a violation is absolutely unacceptable. I appreciate that, madam. I just want my shovel back, honestly." "Oh, you will get it back. And Miss Carmichael is going to learn a very expensive lesson about respecting public property." After I hung up with Deputy Chief Rawlings, I finally felt like I could breathe a little easier. This was not just a petty neighborhood dispute anymore. This had become an official matter involving the police and the fire department. The next morning, I woke up to find my driveway blocked by Brenda's silver Mercedes. She was standing on my front porch, pounding on the door with the kind of aggressive entitlement that only a truly dedicated Karen could muster. I opened the door but kept the screen door locked between us. "You called the police on me," she shrieked, her face red with fury. "Do you have any idea what you have done? I am the HOA president. I was doing my job. Your job is to steal people's property and manufacture fake violations," I asked calmly. "I did no such thing. That shovel was a violation, and I was simply documenting it." "Funny, because my security camera shows you taking the shovel from inside my garage and leaning it against the wall yourself." Her expression flickered. Just for a moment, I saw the panic before she covered it with more indignation. "That is a lie. You doctored that video." "I will sue you for defamation. Feel free. I have already provided the original footage to the police and the fire department. By the way, did you know that stealing government property is a felony? Because that shovel technically belongs to the fire department, not me." The color drained from her face. "That is ridiculous. It is just a shovel. Just a shovel that you stole. I suggest you talk to your lawyer, Brenda. I am done with this conversation." I closed the door in her face and watched through the peephole as she stood there sputtering for another minute before finally storming back to her car. She peeled out of my driveway fast enough to leave rubber marks on the street. Over the next few days, things escalated quickly. Officer Martinez called me to let me know that the fire department had filed an official report, and the district attorney's office was reviewing the case. Apparently, this was not the first time Brenda had been reported for HOA abuse, but it was the first time there was clear video evidence and the involvement of stolen government property. The HOA board held an emergency meeting, which I attended along with about 30 other residents who had heard about the drama through the neighborhood grapevine. Brenda tried to control the meeting, standing at the front of the community center conference room with her printed agenda and her authoritarian demeanor, but it fell apart almost immediately. "Before we begin with regular business," Brenda started, her voice tight, "I want to address some malicious rumors that have been circulating about me." "You mean the rumors that you stole Quinton's shovel to fine him?" called out a man I recognized from down the street. "Because I saw the video. Quinton posted it in the neighborhood Facebook group." I had indeed posted the video to the private neighborhood Facebook group the day before, after consulting with Officer Martinez, who said it was fine since it was my property and my security footage. The post had over 200 comments within a few hours, almost all of them from residents sharing their own stories of Brenda's excessive behavior. Brenda's jaw clenched. "That video has been taken out of context. I was performing my duties as HOA president by documenting violations." "By stealing his property," another woman shouted. "That is insane." The meeting devolved into chaos. Resident after resident stood up to share their experiences with Brenda's overzealous enforcement of HOA rules. One man talked about being fined because his trash can was visible from the street for 3 hours after collection time because he was at work. A woman described being threatened with liens on her property because her mailbox was painted the wrong shade of black. Another couple had been reported to code enforcement for having a vegetable garden that Brenda claimed was unsightly, even though it was in their backyard and not visible from the street. The vice president of the HOA board, a reasonable man named Tom Richardson who worked as an accountant, finally stood up and called for order. "This meeting is clearly not productive. I am calling for an immediate vote of no confidence in our current president." "You cannot do that," Brenda protested. "That is not on the agenda. Actually, according to our bylaws, any board member can call for a vote of no confidence at any meeting with a second from another board member," Tom said calmly. He looked at the secretary, a quiet woman named Patricia Chen. "Do I have a second?" "Seconded," Patricia said immediately, not even hesitating. The vote was held right there. Out of the approximately 30 homeowners present, 27 voted to remove Brenda from her position as HOA president. Only Brenda herself and 2 of her close friends voted against it. Brenda's face went through several shades of red and purple. "This is illegal. I will sue all of you. I will sue the entire HOA." "Actually, it is completely legal according to our governing documents," Tom said. "You are removed from the board effective immediately. We will need you to turn over all HOA records, files, and property within 72 hours. Brenda grabbed her things and stormed out of the community center, but not before turning around at the door to deliver one final threat. "You have not heard the last of this. I know lawyers. I know important people. You will all regret this." The door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the frame. 2 days after the HOA meeting, Officer Martinez called me again. "I wanted to give you an update. The DA has decided to press charges. Miss Carmichael is being charged with theft and theft of government property. The latter is a Class 6 felony in Colorado because the shovel was valued at over $100 as fire department equipment. She will also be charged with filing a false complaint, which is a misdemeanor. Wow, I said, genuinely surprised. I honestly just wanted my shovel back. I understand, but once it became a matter of government property theft, it was out of our hands. The fire department takes this stuff seriously because they have to account for all their equipment and property. Plus, between you and me, the DA is tired of HOA horror stories. They see it as an opportunity to send a message. What happens now? She will be formally charged within the week. She will probably get a court summons. Given that it is a first offense and a relatively minor theft, she will likely get offered a plea deal that involves restitution, community service, and probation. But if she fights it and loses, she could be looking at actual jail time. I thanked Officer Martinez and hung up, feeling a strange mix of vindication and disbelief. All I had wanted was to clear my driveway after a snowstorm, and now the HOA president was facing felony charges. The neighborhood Facebook group exploded with activity. People were divided into camps. Most were celebrating Brenda's downfall, sharing more stories of her petty tyranny. But there was a small group, mostly Brenda's friends, who claimed this was all an overreaction and that I had ruined her life over a simple misunderstanding. I tried to stay out of the online drama, but it was hard to avoid. One of Brenda's friends, a woman named Susan, posted a long screed about how I was a terrible person for pressing charges over a shovel. I did not respond directly, but several other neighbors jumped in to defend me and point out that I had not pressed charges at all. The fire department had, because Brenda had stolen their property. A week later, I received a certified letter from an attorney representing Brenda. It was a cease and desist letter demanding that I stop defaming her character and remove the security footage from the internet. I called the lawyer whose number was at the bottom of the letter, a man named Harold Pritchett, who sounded bored when he answered. "Mr. Pritchett, I am Quinton J. I received your letter about Brenda Carmichael." "Ah, yes," he said, and I could hear papers shuffling. "My client is very distressed by your actions and the damage to her reputation. Your client stole my property, which happened to be fire department equipment, to manufacture a fake HOA violation. I have clear video evidence that has been provided to law enforcement. There is no defamation here, just documentation of criminal activity." There was a long pause. "I was not aware of the video evidence." "Did your client tell you about the video?" Another pause. "No, she did not mention that." "Well, I suggest you ask her about it before you send any more legal threats." The video clearly shows her entering my garage without permission, taking the shovel, staging it against my garage, photographing it, and then taking it to her house. That is theft, trespassing, and filing a false complaint. All documented. I heard him sigh. "Mr. J, I appreciate your candor. Let me have another conversation with my client. You may disregard that letter. Thank you." He hung up without another word. I later learned from Tom Richardson, the new interim HOA president, that Brenda had gone through 3 different lawyers, each of whom dropped her case once they saw the evidence against her. Meanwhile, the fire department wanted their shovel back. Deputy Chief Rawlings called me to let me know that they had obtained a search warrant for Brenda's property to recover the stolen equipment. The search was executed on a Thursday morning, and according to the police report that became public record later, they found not just my shovel, but 4 other shovels with fire department markings in Brenda's garage, along with various other items that appeared to have been confiscated from residents during manufactured HOA violations. There were garden decorations, door wreaths, a basketball hoop, several trash cans, and even a small children's playhouse that had apparently been set up too close to someone's property line. Brenda had been systematically stealing people's property and hoarding it, presumably as some twisted form of control over the neighborhood. The charges against her were amended to include multiple counts of theft. The story started getting picked up by local news outlets. I declined interview requests, but several of my neighbors did not, and soon Brenda Carmichael became a minor local celebrity for all the wrong reasons. The local CBS affiliate did a whole segment about HOA abuse and used Brenda's case as the centerpiece. I finally got my shovel back about 3 weeks after it was initially stolen. Deputy Chief Rawlings delivered it personally, along with a thank you card from the fire department for helping them recover their property. The shovel had been cleaned and was in perfect condition, though I could not look at it without thinking about the absurd chain of events it had caused. Brenda's court date was set for mid-March. I was subpoenaed to testify, though the assistant district attorney handling the case told me it probably would not go to trial. "She is going to take a plea," he said confidently when we met to go over my testimony. "Her lawyer knows she cannot win this. The evidence is overwhelming." He was right. 2 days before the trial date, Brenda accepted a plea deal. She pled guilty to 1 count of theft of government property, a reduced Class 1 misdemeanor instead of the felony charge, and 1 count of filing a false complaint. The other theft charges for the additional shovels and confiscated items were folded into the single charge as part of the plea agreement. Her sentence was 300 hours of community service, 18 months of probation, a $2,000 fine, and full restitution to the fire department for the cost of the stolen property. She was also required to write personal apology letters to every resident whose property she had taken, including me. Additionally, she was permanently banned from holding any position in any homeowners association in the state of Colorado as part of her probation terms. I received my apology letter about 2 weeks after her sentencing. It was clearly written by her lawyer, stiff and formal, with no genuine remorse evident in the words. "Dear Mr. J, I apologize for taking your snow shovel and for any inconvenience this may have caused you. I recognize that my actions were inappropriate, and I am taking steps to make amends. Sincerely, Brenda Carmichael." I filed it away with all the other documents related to the case. I did not need her apology, but it was nice to have the official acknowledgement that I had been wronged. The HOA elected a new board in April. Tom Richardson became the official president, and the new board immediately set about reforming the association's rules and enforcement policies. They implemented a system where any violations had to be verified by at least 2 board members before a fine could be issued, and they established an appeals process for residents who felt they were being unfairly targeted. They also significantly reduced the list of finnable offenses, eliminating many of the petty rules that Brenda had used to torment people. The neighborhood felt different after everything settled down. People seemed more relaxed, more willing to actually talk to each other, instead of living in fear of the next violation notice. There were block parties and neighborhood barbecues that summer, things that had not happened in years because everyone had been too worried about violating some obscure HOA rule about gatherings or noise. I ran into Brenda once, about 6 months after her sentencing. I was at the grocery store, pushing my cart down the cereal aisle when I saw her coming from the opposite direction. Our eyes met, and I saw her jaw tighten. For a moment, I thought she might say something, but instead she abruptly turned her cart around and went down a different aisle. I felt a little bad for her, but mostly I just felt relieved that the whole ordeal was over. "George," my elderly neighbor who had loaned me his shovel during the original snowstorm, loved telling the story to anyone who would listen. He had lived in Lakewood Heights for 2 decades and said that the shovel incident, as it became known in the neighborhood, was the most excitement he had seen in all that time. "I always knew Brenda was trouble," he would say, shaking his head. "But I never thought she would end up with a criminal record over a snow shovel. Proves you should never mess with a man's tools." The local hardware store where the fire department had originally purchased the shovels actually used the incident as a marketing opportunity. They put up a sign that said, "Home of the famous fire department shovels," and ran a promotion where they donated a percentage of snow shovel sales to the fire department's community safety programs. I found it somewhat amusing, though the assistant DA told me that Brenda had been furious about it and felt like she was being mocked. To which I could only think, well, she had brought it on herself. My relationship with the new HOA board was cordial and professional. Tom Richardson was a reasonable guy who understood that his job was to maintain property values and neighborhood standards, not to act as a dictator. When I accidentally let my grass get a bit too long during a busy work period that summer, I got a friendly email reminding me about the lawn maintenance guidelines, not a threatening letter with fines attached. I mowed the lawn that weekend, and that was the end of it. That was how it should have always been. I did wonder sometimes what drove Brenda to such extreme behavior. Was it a power trip? Some deep-seated need for control? Had she always been that way, or had being HOA president slowly corrupted her? I would never know the answers to those questions, and honestly, I did not need to. All I knew was that her actions had consequences, and those consequences had caught up with her. The fire department's community safety program continued, though they changed their procedures after the incident. Now, when they distributed equipment to residents, they kept more detailed records and did periodic check-ins to make sure the equipment was still in the possession of the right people. Deputy Chief Rawlings told me that my case had helped them identify weaknesses in their property tracking system, so at least some good had come out of the whole mess. One interesting development was that several residents who had been fined by Brenda under questionable circumstances filed small claims suits to get their money back. The HOA's insurance company ended up settling most of those claims rather than fighting them, recognizing that Brenda's documented pattern of manufactured violations put them in an indefensible legal position. In total, the insurance company paid out over $15,000 in refunds and settlements, and subsequently dropped the HOA's coverage. The new board had to find a different insurer, which cost more because of the claim's history. Brenda's husband, a quiet man named Roger who worked in pharmaceutical sales, filed for divorce about 8 months after her sentencing. According to neighborhood gossip, which I tried not to pay too much attention to but sometimes overheard anyway, the entire incident had been the final straw in an already troubled marriage. Roger apparently had been embarrassed by the whole thing and tired of Brenda's increasingly erratic behavior. They sold their house in Lakewood Heights and moved away separately. I felt bad for Roger. He had always seemed like a decent guy who was just trying to keep his head down and live his life. The new family who moved into Brenda's old house were young professionals with a toddler. They were friendly and normal, and they seemed genuinely confused when longtime residents would point out their house as where the shovel thief used to live. Eventually, the story would come out, usually told with a mix of humor and disbelief, and the new owners would laugh awkwardly and change the subject. I kept my snow shovel in a locked cabinet in my garage after that, which was probably overkill, but the whole experience had made me more security conscious. I also upgraded my security cameras to cover more angles of my property, including a clear view of the garage entrance. The footage had saved me once, and I figured it was worth the investment to have better coverage going forward. The following winter, when the first big snowstorm hit, I found myself standing in my garage, holding the same fire department snow shovel that had caused so much trouble. It seemed heavier somehow, loaded with the weight of all the drama it had sparked. But when I started clearing my driveway, it was just a shovel again. A good shovel with an ergonomic handle that saved my back. Nothing more and nothing less. George waved at me from his own driveway, where he was struggling with his old plastic shovel. I walked over and helped him clear his driveway, which took about 30 minutes. When we finished, he invited me in for hot chocolate, and we sat in his warm kitchen talking about everything except HOA drama. It was nice. It was normal. It was how neighborhood life should be. Spring came and went. The new HOA board was functioning smoothly, handling actual issues like organizing a neighborhood garage sale and arranging for street repairs. Property values remained stable. People kept their lawns reasonably maintained. Nobody was terrorized by violation notices. It turned out that a homeowners association could actually function as it was intended, as a tool for maintaining community standards, rather than as a weapon for petty tyrants. I did hear one last update about Brenda through the grapevine. She had apparently moved to a condo in downtown Denver, one of those high-rise buildings with no HOA because everything was managed by a professional property management company. Probably for the best. I hope she had learned something from the experience, though I had my doubts. Some people are just wired a certain way, and no amount of consequences can change their fundamental nature. As for me, I went back to my quiet life as a software engineer working from home. The most exciting thing that happened over the next few months was a deadline crunch for a major project, which was stressful but manageable. My biggest concern with the HOA was making sure I paid my dues on time, which I set up on automatic payment to avoid any hassles. I did get asked to join the HOA board at one point. Tom Richardson called me and said they had an opening for a board member and thought my experience with the Brenda situation would make me a good advocate for fair treatment of residents. I politely declined. I had no interest in HOA politics or governance. I just wanted to live my life, do my work, and shovel my driveway in peace when it snowed. The shovel incident became something of a legend in Lakewood Heights. New residents would hear about it during neighborhood barbecues or block parties, usually told with increasing embellishment over time. In some versions, Brenda had stolen dozens of shovels. In others, she had been running an elaborate HOA extortion scheme. The truth was dramatic enough without exaggeration, but I understood the appeal of a good story. One Sunday afternoon in late summer, I was sitting on my front porch with a book and a glass of iced tea when a car pulled up in front of my house. A woman in her 30s got out, carrying a professional camera and a notepad. She walked up to my porch with a friendly smile. "Hi, are you Quinton J?" she asked. "I am. Can I help you? My name is Rachel Foster. I am a freelance journalist working on a feature story about HOA abuse and reform. Your case has been cited in several advocacy circles as an example of how HOA power can be checked when residents stand up for themselves. I was hoping I could interview you." I sighed. "I am not really interested in being part of any articles or stories. That whole situation is behind me." "I understand and I respect that, but I think your story could help other people who are dealing with similar situations. It shows that there are legal remedies and that HOAs are not above the law." I thought about it for a moment. She had a point. If my experience could help someone else stand up to an abusive HOA, maybe it was worth talking about. All right, I said. But I want to be clear that I did not set out to ruin anyone's life. I just wanted my property back and to not be unfairly fined. Of course. That is exactly the angle I am going for. Regular people pushed to their limits by unreasonable authority. I spent the next hour talking to Rachel about everything that had happened, from finding my shovel missing to watching Brenda get removed from the HOA board to the eventual criminal charges and plea deal. She took notes, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in the broader implications of the story. "The thing that strikes me," she said as we were wrapping up, "is how the involvement of the fire department changed everything. If it had just been your personal property, would it have been taken as seriously? Probably not," I admitted. The fact that it was government property, even something as simple as a snow shovel, elevated it to a different level. And the fire department was really aggressive about pursuing it because they had to account for their equipment. You think Brenda understood that when she took the shovel? I doubt it. I think she saw a shovel in my garage and saw an opportunity to create a violation. She had done it before with other people's property. This time, she just picked the wrong item to steal. Rachel's article came out about a month later in a regional magazine that focused on Colorado community issues. It was well written and fair, focusing on the broader problem of HOA overreach while using my story as a case study. She interviewed several HOA reform advocates, a couple of lawyers who specialized in HOA disputes, and even got a quote from Deputy Chief Rawlings about the importance of tracking government property. The article generated some buzz locally, and I got a few more interview requests that I declined. But it also had a tangible impact. 2 other HOA boards in the Denver area implemented reforms similar to what Lakewood Heights had done, creating appeals processes and multi-member verification systems for violations. A state legislator even referenced the article when proposing new regulations for HOA governance, though that bill died in committee. I ran into Tom Richardson at a neighborhood barbecue in September. He had a burger in one hand and a beer in the other, and he looked more relaxed than I had ever seen him during his time dealing with HOA business. "You know, Quinton," he said, "I never properly thanked you for what you did. Getting rid of Brenda was the best thing that ever happened to this neighborhood." "I did not really do anything except defend myself," I said. "She brought it on herself." "Maybe, but you stood up to her when a lot of other people were too intimidated. You showed everyone that she was not untouchable. That mattered." I appreciated his words, though I still felt strange being cast as some kind of neighborhood hero. I had just wanted my shovel back and to avoid an unjust fine. Everything else had spiraled from there. As autumn arrived and the leaves started turning, I found myself reflecting on the whole experience. It had been surreal and stressful, but it had also been oddly educational. I learned about HOA bylaws, criminal procedure, government property tracking, and the surprising amount of legal complexity that could arise from something as simple as a stolen shovel. I learned that standing up for yourself could have consequences far beyond what you initially imagined, both good and bad. Most importantly, I learned that communities function better when power is checked and balanced, when rules are applied fairly, and when people are not afraid of arbitrary authority. Brenda's reign as HOA president had created an atmosphere of fear and resentment. Her removal and the subsequent reforms had allowed the neighborhood to become what it should have always been, a place where people actually wanted to live, not just endure. The fire department held their annual community safety event again that October, distributing winter preparedness kits and snow shovels to residents. I attended, partly out of curiosity and partly because I had developed a strange affinity for the fire department after they had taken my case so seriously. Deputy Chief Rawlings was there, demonstrating proper snow shoveling technique to a small crowd of residents. When she saw me, she waved me over. "Quinton, good to see you. Are you here for a new shovel?" she asked with a grin. "No, I am good with the one I have. I keep it locked up tight now," she laughed. "I heard. You know, we completely revised our property tracking system after your case. Every piece of equipment we loan out now has GPS tracking and we do quarterly audits. You helped us modernize. Glad I could help, even if it was not intentional. The best lessons usually are not. Hey, we are always looking for volunteers for community outreach programs. If you are ever interested, let me know. You have a good head on your shoulders and you know how to handle difficult situations." I told her I would think about it, and I actually did. I ended up volunteering for a few fire department events over the next year, helping with setup and talking to residents about home safety. It was rewarding in a way my regular work was not, connecting with people face to face and contributing something tangible to the community. Winter came around again, and with it, the inevitable snowstorms. Each time I grabbed my fire department's snow shovel from its locked cabinet, I could not help but smile a little at the absurdity of everything that had happened. A snow shovel had become the catalyst for criminal charges, HOA reform, and minor local fame. It was the kind of story that sounded made up, but every bit of it had actually happened. George, my neighbor, passed away peacefully in his sleep that February at the age of 87. His family held a memorial service at the community center, and dozens of neighbors showed up to pay their respects. During the reception afterward, George's daughter told a story about how her father had been so excited about the HOA drama, how he had followed every development like it was his personal soap opera. "He told me that helping you with his old shovel was the highlight of his winter," she said with a sad smile. "He loved that he got to play a small part in taking down the neighborhood tyrant. He called you his friend, Quinton." He did not have many close friends in his later years, so that meant a lot to him. I had not realized how much George had valued our friendship. We had just been friendly neighbors who occasionally helped each other out. But I was glad I had known him, and I was glad I could give him something to be excited about in his final years, even if it had been unintentional. The new family who moved into George's house were also nice people, a retired couple looking to downsize from a larger home. They quickly integrated into the neighborhood social scene, and within a few months, it was like they had always been there. Life in Lakewood Heights continued on peacefully. The HOA functioned quietly in the background, handling necessary business without drama or controversy. Property values held steady. The neighborhood remained a pleasant place to live. It was, in other words, exactly what a properly functioning HOA was supposed to create. I still see my snow shovel in the garage every day when I park my car. It is just a tool, but it represents something more now. It represents the idea that ordinary people can stand up to petty tyranny, that evidence and truth matter, that rules and authority are not absolute, and that communities are strengthened when power is held accountable. Brenda completed her community service and probation without incident. I heard through the grapevine that she was working as a receptionist at a dental office and living a quiet life. I hoped she was doing okay and that she had learned something valuable from the experience. I never wished her any real harm. I just wanted her to stop abusing her authority, and in that respect, the legal system had accomplished what it needed to accomplish. As for me, I continued my life as a software engineer. a volunteer with the fire department, and a resident of a now well-run neighborhood. I never served on the HOA board, but I did attend the annual meetings and stayed informed about community issues. I learned that citizenship, even at the neighborhood level, requires engagement and vigilance. You cannot just ignore governance and hope for the best. Sometimes you have to stand up, provide evidence, and let the system work as it is supposed to. The snow shovel still works perfectly. Every winter I use it to clear my driveway and sidewalk, and sometimes I help my neighbors with theirs. It is well made with an ergonomic handle that saves my back during those long Colorado snowstorms. The fire department logo is still clearly visible on the blade, etched into the metal as a permanent reminder of where it came from and what it represents. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that the whole incident could have been avoided at so many points. If Brenda had been a reasonable HOA president, if she had not felt the need to manufacture violations, if she had not chosen my shovel, if it had not been fire department property, if I had not had security cameras, if the fire department had not taken their property tracking seriously. So many small factors that added up to create a perfect storm of consequences for someone who thought they were above accountability. But it happened the way it happened, and I could not change any of it even if I wanted to. All I could do was move forward, live my life, and maybe help other people when similar situations arose. The journalist Rachel Foster still emailed me occasionally when she heard about HOA abuse cases, asking if I would be willing to talk to the people involved about my experience. Sometimes I did, offering advice about documentation, knowing your rights, and not being afraid to stand up to unjust authority. The story of how an HOA Karen stole my snow shovel and got charged when the fire station reported their property missing became more than just a personal experience. It became a lesson in civic engagement, a case study in the limits of HOA power, and a reminder that even the smallest act of standing up for yourself can create ripples far beyond what you imagined. And that shovel, it is still in my garage, locked safely away, ready for the next snowstorm. Just a tool, just a snow shovel, but also so much more than that. It is proof that evidence matters, that truth matters, and that no one, not even an HOA president, is above the law.